So, Apple's big 2025 September event has wrapped, and we're left with three new iPhones, the 17, the 17 Pro, and a brand new model called the iPhone Air. And while the keynote was all flash and big promises, the reaction from the experts? Well, it's been a lot more complicated. Okay, let's really dive into what's going on here.
Tech reviewer Marques Brownlee, you probably know him as MKBHD, he just summed it up perfectly. He said there's some good tech, some really interesting designs, and some questionable decisions. And it's that push and pull, that conflict, that makes this entire iPhone 17 lineup so fascinating to break down.
All right, so before we get to the controversial new kid on the block, let's talk about the foundation for this year. That's the iPhone 17 and the 17 Pro. These are the models that got those solid, pretty predictable upgrades. The kind of stuff that just pushes the lineup forward in ways we kind of expected.
So let's start with the clear wins. That super smooth 120 Hz ProMotion display is finally on the standard iPhone 17, which honestly is a huge deal for a lot of people. Meanwhile, the 17 Pro gets a major boost under the hood. Apple actually added a vapor chamber to help with cooling and shuffle the internals around to fit a bigger battery. These are the real, steak and potatoes upgrades that people were hoping for.
But the one truly clever surprise this year was that new selfie camera. They're calling it Center Stage. And what it does is, it uses a bigger, square sensor. So what does that actually mean? It means you can take a full-resolution vertical selfie or a full-resolution horizontal one without ever turning your phone. The camera just intelligently crops the square sensor differently. It sounds like a small thing, but it's actually a pretty genius piece of engineering that just makes life easier.
All right, now for the main event, the phone that completely stole the show, for better and maybe for worse, the all-new iPhone Air. And look, this isn't just an update, it's a totally new direction, with Apple leaning hard into its obsession with making things thin. And this is exactly how Apple is selling it. The tagline itself is kind of a paradox, isn't it? The absolute thinnest design possible, but with the kind of performance you'd expect from a Pro phone. That's the promise, that's the sizzle Apple is selling you.
Just look at that number, 5.6 millimeters. I mean, that is just stunningly, ridiculously thin. MKBHD made a great point that nobody was really asking for thinner phones, but once you actually hold one this thin, you can't deny the engineering is impressive. It's got a serious wow factor.
And see, Apple isn't just selling you specs here, they're selling a feeling. The pitch is all about premium materials like titanium mixed with pro-level features, the same chip, a great camera, a big display, and somehow they promise it all comes with all-day battery life. On paper, it really sounds like they've made the perfect phone with absolutely zero compromises.
But that's the marketing. Now we got to get to the steak. This is where we pivot from Apple's perfect pitch to the expert's reality check, and where we start to spot some pretty serious red flags hiding just beneath that beautiful thin surface.
And it all leads to this one crucial question. In their race to make something impossibly thin, did Apple end up sacrificing the things that actually make a phone good in the real world? I mean, is it even practical? Okay, this is where the trade-offs get really clear. Apple claims all-day battery, but MKBHD's reaction was just blunt. No way. Then you've got durability. Super thin phones have a bad history of bending. But the biggest red flag might be performance. It has the same Pro chip, sure, but it's missing the Pro's new vapor chamber for cooling. That means it's almost guaranteed to overheat and slow down under any heavy use.
And if you just look at the numbers, yeah, the concerns seem valid. The iPhone Air has the worst battery life of the entire new lineup. It's quoting just 27 hours of video playback. Compare that to 30 for the standard iPhone 17 and a massive 39 hours for the Pro. It's not even close. And that all leads to this pretty brutal conclusion from MKBHD. He says that if you take the emotion out of it, how cool it looks and feels, and you just compare the specs and how it's likely to perform in the real world, the iPhone Air is, logically, the worst phone in the lineup.
So why would Apple do this, right? Why release this beautiful but seemingly flawed phone for $1,000? Let's zoom out for a second and try to figure out what Apple's bigger strategy might be here.
MKBHD has two really compelling theories. Theory one, this is just a market test. The iPhone mini didn't sell, the Plus was just okay, so now they're just throwing something new at the wall, an ultra-thin phone at that price, just to see if it sticks. Theory two is way bigger. This is a vision of the future. It's a flawed first-gen product for sure, but it's pioneering the tech and the design that could define all phones and maybe even a future foldable iPhone years from now.
And the MacBook Air analogy just illustrates this perfectly. Remember the original one back in 2008? It was beautiful, but it was also underpowered, overpriced, and had a ton of flaws. Sound familiar? But over time, they refined that revolutionary design, and eventually it became the gold standard for modern laptops. So the question is, are we watching that exact same story play out right now, but for the iPhone?
But let's bring it back to right now, to the real world. Because despite all those logical red flags, you just can't ignore the emotional pull of this thing. As MKBHD admits, the experience of just picking it up and holding it is so stunning that it might just convince a lot of people to completely overlook all the compromises. And that right there is the power of Apple's design. And so that's the real dilemma we're left with. The iPhone Air is basically a conflict you can hold in your hand. It's the sizzle of a revolutionary, beautiful design versus the stake of real-world compromises in battery, durability, and performance. And the final question for anyone thinking of buying one is, which one matters more to you?